Abigail Adams, a life shrouded in scandal and intrigue. Abigail Adams, the wife of the second President of the United States, John Adams, and mother of the sixth President, John Quincy Adams, is often remembered as an advocate for women's rights and an influential advisor to her husband. However, her life was not without controversy and intrigue. Here are 10 of the most scandalous and shocking facts about Abigail Adams, some of which are based on credible rumors. Fact number 1. A young love, meeting John Adams. In 1759, at the tender age of 15, Abigail Smith first encountered John Adams, a burgeoning lawyer with ambitions that stretched far beyond his rural upbringing. Their meeting occurred during a visit by John Adams to the Smith family residence in Weymouth, Massachusetts, where he accompanied his friend Richard Cranch. Cranch was betrothed to Abigail's elder sister, Mary Smith, drawing John into the Smith family's social orbit. Initially, Abigail's mother harbored reservations about John, critiquing his modest rural background and the meager fortune he possessed at that time. Despite these concerns, the intellectual and emotional bond that swiftly developed between John and Abigail proved formidable. The couple exchanged vows on October 25, 1764, within the walls of the Smith household. Their union was characterized by an extensive and poignant correspondence that spans decades, offering a profound window into their personal concerns, political ideologies, and the evolution of their mutual devotion. Number 2. Advising her husband, the unseen president. Abigail Adams, endearingly dubbed Mrs. President, was a pivotal figure during John Adams' presidency, exerting considerable influence over his presidential decisions. This influence was notable given the societal norms of the 18th century, which typically confined women to domestic roles. John Adams, in a letter dated October 16, 1774, explicitly acknowledged her influence, stating, "I never wanted your advice and assistance more in my life." This admission underscores the depth of her involvement in matters of state and governance. The moniker Mrs. President was not merely affectionate but also a testament to her unofficial role in the administration, stirring both admiration and controversy among their contemporaries. Her involvement was so pronounced that it sparked rumors suggesting she was the actual power behind the presidency, challenging the prevailing gender norms of the time. Number 3. Champion of women's rights, ahead of her time. Abigail Adams was a vocal advocate for women's rights, a stance that was both revolutionary and contentious during her era. On March 31, 1776, in a letter to her husband, she penned the now famous words, "Remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors." This plea was not only a personal request to her husband but also a broader call for the inclusion of women's rights in the new laws of the United States. Her advocacy was met with mixed reactions. While some admired her forward-thinking views, others deemed them overly progressive. John Adams' response, humorously referring to the feared despotism of the petticoat, illustrates the prevailing dismissive attitudes towards women's rights, highlighting the societal challenges Abigail faced in her advocacy. This exchange between Abigail and John Adams has been celebrated in historical accounts as a foundational moment in the discourse on gender equality in America. Number 4. Secret correspondence with Thomas Jefferson. During a tumultuous period of political strife between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, Abigail Adams engaged in a discreet and intellectual correspondence with Jefferson. Despite the fraying bonds between the two founding fathers, particularly from the mid-1790s during Adams' presidency and Jefferson's vice presidency, Abigail maintained a channel of communication that was rich in political and personal discourse. Their letters, exchanged over several years, showcase a nuanced relationship that oscillated between warm personal regard and sharp political disagreement. Historians like Joseph J. Ellis suggest that this correspondence could have subtly influenced key political decisions, especially given Jefferson's subsequent presidency and his philosophical alignment with Abigail on several issues. Their dialogue represents a fascinating intersection of personal alliance and political rivalry, underscoring Abigail's own nuanced role in the political landscape of early America. Number 5. The scandal of her friendship with Mercy Otis Warren. Abigail Adams' association with Mercy Otis Warren, a formidable political writer and critic of the federal Constitution, was perceived as highly controversial. Mercy, a prolific playwright and pamphleteer, was known for her sharp critiques of Federalist policies, which often opposed John Adams' political stances. Their friendship, rooted in mutual respect and shared intellectual pursuits, blossomed despite the political tensions of the era. This alliance was particularly scandalous as it placed Abigail in close ideological proximity to a noted anti-federalist at a time when her husband was advocating for strong federal government structures. This relationship not only highlighted Abigail's radical leanings but also painted her as a figure willing to cross ideological boundaries for the sake of intellectual engagement. It fueled contemporary and historical speculation about her potential influence on political dialogues and decisions beyond the private sphere. Number 6. The infamous Remember the Lady's Letter, Misinterpreted Motives. Abigail Adams' Remember the Lady's Letter, dated March 31, 1776, sent to John Adams amidst the drafting of laws for the new nation, has often been misinterpreted in historical analyses. While traditionally celebrated as a pioneering assertion of women's rights, some interpretations suggest that Abigail's motives might have stemmed from personal grievances or frustrations related to her experiences and limitations as a woman in her society. Critics argue that her advocacy could have been influenced by her immediate social conditions rather than a broader ideological commitment to gender equality. This perspective suggests a more complex and perhaps more self-interested motive behind her famous plea, casting a shadow on the altruistic legacy traditionally ascribed to her. Such interpretations challenge the simplistic view of her as merely a forward-thinking advocate for women's rights, proposing instead a more layered, personal impetus behind her political expressions. Number 7. Her relationship with John Adams, a marriage of equals? Abigail and John Adams shared a marriage that was notably progressive for the 18th century, characterized by profound mutual respect and intellectual camaraderie. In a time when women were often relegated to strictly domestic roles, Abigail's involvement in political and intellectual discourses with her husband was viewed with skepticism and, at times, outright scandal. Contemporary critics and some personal acquaintances branded John as henpecked, suggesting that Abigail wielded an inappropriate amount of influence over him. Such dynamics in their relationship, including Abigail's assertiveness in discussions and John's receptiveness to her ideas, were revolutionary, challenging the traditional notions of marital roles. This egalitarian approach to marriage not only set them apart from their peers but also fueled societal gossip about the nature of John's leadership and autonomy. Number 8. Rumors of infidelity, the untold stories. There were persistent rumors that Abigail had romantic entanglements outside her marriage. While no concrete evidence has ever been found, these rumors suggested that her close relationships with several prominent men, including Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, were more than just platonic. Such speculation tarnished her reputation and fueled public intrigue. Number 9. Financial savvy, the wealthy woman behind the president. Abigail Adams was an astute financial manager, overseeing the family's investments and ensuring their wealth grew. Her involvement in financial matters was unusual for women of her era and led to gossip about her ambition and control over the family's fortune. This financial acumen was both admired and resented, adding to her controversial image. Number 10. The tragic fate of her children, a mother's sorrow. Abigail Adams faced profound personal losses with the death of 3 of her 6 children in infancy or early childhood, a common yet heartbreaking occurrence in the 18th century. The surviving children, Abigail Nabby Adams Smith, John Quincy Adams, and Thomas Boylston Adams, reflected the harsh realities of life at the time, with high infant mortality rates and the constant threat of disease. Public scrutiny often intertwined personal tragedy with professional roles. Rumors circulated that the stresses of Abigail's public life and political involvements might have somehow contributed to these family misfortunes. These speculations added a somber dimension to her legacy, highlighting the personal costs of her public engagements and the societal expectations placed on women in her position. Her ability to navigate these tragedies while supporting her husband's career and managing her own public role remains a poignant testament to her strength and resilience.